She finally faced the human who saved her. And what she said left all in silence. The space station floated silently against the backdrop of a star-speckled void, its massive structure gleaming under distant suns. Ships of every shape and size docked and departed in a constant dance, their lights blinking like fireflies against the black of space. Inside, the station was a city of chaos, buzzing with life from countless species, some familiar, some so strange that even the most experienced travelers stopped to stare. Lyra stepped off her transport, her boots clicking against the polished metal floor. Her posture was graceful but alert, every movement precise. Though she had traveled across galaxies, she still felt the tension that came from being in a place filled with strangers and hidden eyes. She had not set foot in this station for nearly 5 years. Back then, she had been fleeing for her life, her shuttle crippled and her chances of survival slim. But she had made it, thanks to the human whose name she had only heard whispered in awe and gratitude across distant worlds. Her pale blue eyes scanned the crowds. Some aliens were small, no taller than a human child, their faces covered in intricate patterns of scales. Others were towering, with limbs that moved like liquid steel, speaking in low, resonant tones that vibrated the floor. And then there were humans, like her savior, blending in quietly, often unnoticed. Lyra moved among them, her long cloak brushing the floor, a symbol of her rank and heritage. She could feel the curious stares of those who recognized her, though she did not stop. She had a purpose here, and nothing could distract her from it. She remembered that day vividly. The shuttle she had been aboard had been attacked by mercenaries hired to stop her from reaching a peace summit on a distant planet. The explosion had thrown her into the void, alone and spinning. She had thought it was the end. But then, from somewhere among the wreckage and chaos, a human had appeared. Calm, fearless, and quick, he had maneuvered through the debris and pulled her to safety. She had never seen him clearly, only the back of his jacket and the steady grip of his hand as he carried her to a waiting ship. Yet his actions had saved not just her life, but, unknowingly, the lives of millions who depended on the peace she carried. As she moved deeper into the station, Lyra felt a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. The human had done more than save her. He had changed the course of events that shaped her entire species' future. And now, finally, she would meet him. Not as a fleeting figure in her memory, not as a hero spoken of in stories, but as a man. The station's corridors were narrow and twisting, lined with shops selling exotic goods, repair bays filled with engineers of every kind, and small cafes where beings of all forms gathered. The air was filled with a mixture of scents, from sweet alien spices to the metallic tang of machinery. Holographic signs flickered with advertisements for products she did not recognize, and the hum of engines and voices created a constant, living symphony. Lyra's focus, however, remained on finding him. She paused near a large observation window, looking out at a hangar where ships were being refueled and repaired. The sheer scale of the station was breathtaking, and she allowed herself a moment to breathe, her mind replaying the day she had been saved. She had been terrified, floating in the endless black, certain of her death. And yet that human had appeared, steady and calm, an anchor in the chaos. She had never thanked him properly, never had the chance to look into his eyes and tell him the impact of what he had done. And now, here he was, somewhere in this station. She had been told he often kept to himself, observing rather than participating. That suited her. It meant she would not have to search endlessly. Her pace quickened, the anticipation building. As she walked, she noticed others staring at her. Some whispered, pointing in her direction. She was recognizable, not just for her appearance, but for her reputation. A diplomat of her stature rarely appeared in public without a significant reason. But Lyra ignored them, focusing on the goal that had brought her across light years of space. Finally, she spotted a man standing near the central hub, his posture relaxed but his eyes alert. He was observing the crowd with a quiet patience, not moving with the urgency of the station's inhabitants. There was a calm in him that immediately reminded her of the human who had saved her years ago. She slowed, studying him carefully. Could this be him? The stories had not prepared her for the sight of him, standing there so ordinary yet somehow commanding attention without trying. She took another step, then another, until she was only a few meters away. He had not noticed her yet, absorbed in the ebb and flow of the station. Lyra felt her pulse quicken. The years of longing to meet him, to express the depth of her gratitude, were about to culminate in this moment. She drew in a steadying breath, reminding herself of the composure required of a diplomat. But inside, her heart raced with emotions she had tried to bury, awe, respect, and the memory of fear turned into hope. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but carried an authority that cut through the surrounding noise. "Ethan." The man turned slowly, as if sensing the weight behind her words before even knowing their meaning. His eyes met hers, a flicker of recognition passing through them. And in that instant, time seemed to stretch, the noise of the station fading into silence around them. He did not move, did not speak. He simply looked at her, waiting, uncertain yet composed. Lyra stepped closer, careful not to startle him. Every instinct in her body told her to speak, to tell him how much his actions had mattered, how they had changed the course of history. But she paused, searching for the right words, understanding the gravity of this encounter. This was not a casual meeting. This was the moment she had carried in her heart for years. "You saved me," she said finally, her voice steady, carrying both gratitude and something deeper, an acknowledgement of the ripples he had created in the galaxy. "You saved more than just my life. You saved a future that many thought impossible." Ethan blinked, a mix of humility and surprise crossing his features. I only did what anyone would," he replied quietly, his voice almost drowned by the distant hum of the station. Lyra shook her head, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. "No, you did not. You chose when others hesitated. You acted when others faltered. That choice changed everything." For a moment they stood in silence, the crowd around them oblivious to the intensity of the moment. The human before her had saved her life, yes, but he had also saved countless others indirectly, simply by being courageous in a moment when courage mattered most. She felt a strange mixture of awe and relief, knowing she could finally express her gratitude face to face. The station seemed to hold its breath, as if the galaxy itself was aware of this meeting. Lyra and Ethan were two individuals from entirely different worlds, yet connected by an invisible thread of fate. The human had acted without expectation, without desire for recognition, and here she was, finally able to acknowledge him. Ethan's eyes searched hers, looking for something he could not yet name. Perhaps he had expected thanks, but not this depth of acknowledgement. Perhaps he had never imagined that his actions would resonate across species and years. Yet here it was, in the calm certainty of Lyra's gaze, in the steady, deliberate words she spoke. "I wanted to find you," Lyra continued, her voice now carrying the weight of years of unspoken thoughts. "To thank you not just for saving me, but for the courage you showed. It is rare to see such humanity in its truest form." Ethan finally smiled, a small, humble expression. "I never thought anyone would remember that day," he said. "I just did what needed to be done." Lyra shook her head again, her smile widening slightly. "You have no idea what you've done, how far your actions have reached. The galaxy owes you more than I can say." For a moment, words were unnecessary. They simply stood, two figures from different worlds, united by an experience that defied explanation. Around them, the station's chaos continued, yet for them, time slowed. The weight of gratitude, respect, and unspoken understanding hung between them, invisible yet palpable. Finally, Lyra took a step back, her eyes never leaving his. "There is more I need to tell you," she said. "But for now, know that you have my thanks, my respect, and my acknowledgement, as a diplomat and as someone who owes her life to you." Ethan nodded slowly, understanding that this was only the beginning. The meeting was just the first step in a chain of events that would not only affect them but also the course of their worlds. He did not speak, for words felt inadequate in this moment. But in his silence, he acknowledged her gratitude, her recognition, and perhaps even her trust. Lyra felt a small sense of relief. The moment she had waited for, dreamed of, and hoped for had finally arrived. She had faced the human who saved her. And as she looked into his eyes, she realized that their encounter was not just a meeting of individuals. It was the spark of something far greater, a connection that could change the galaxy itself. As they stood there, surrounded by the hum of the station, Lyra allowed herself to feel something she had not felt in years. Hope. Hope that courage, kindness, and humanity, whether human or alien, could shape the future in ways unimaginable. And for the first time in a long while, she believed that perhaps the galaxy was not as chaotic as it seemed. Perhaps, with humans like him, it could be a place of balance, of bravery, and of unexpected heroes. The hum of the station filled the air as Lyra and Ethan walked together through the corridors. moving toward a quieter section where fewer beings crowded the halls. Though the space station was massive, it felt smaller now, as if the distance between them had shrunk the entire world into a bubble that contained only the two of them. The weight of the moment pressed on both, yet neither seemed eager to break it with idle chatter. Lyra's eyes occasionally drifted to Ethan, studying him as he walked calmly beside her. He seemed ordinary, almost plain in his appearance, but she knew better. The bravery he had shown years ago had required something extraordinary. Most beings would have panicked, would have hesitated, yet he had moved with purpose, with skill, and with an instinct for survival that bordered on genius. "Why did you do it?" she asked finally, her voice quiet, almost hesitant. She did not mean the physical act of saving her. She had seen him in action. She meant the choice, the decision that had set countless events into motion. "Why did you risk everything for someone you had never met?" Ethan glanced at her briefly, his expression thoughtful. "I don't know if I can answer that in a way that makes sense," he said. "It wasn't bravery, really. I just did what I thought was right in that moment. I didn't think about the consequences, only that someone needed help." Lyra nodded, understanding the humility in his words. Humans often downplayed their achievements, especially acts of courage. It was part of what made them remarkable in her eyes, their ability to act morally and decisively, even when recognition was impossible. "You saved more than me," she said, her voice firmer now. "Do you know how close we came to losing everything? The summit I was traveling to, if I hadn't survived, the treaty would have failed. Planets would have gone to war. Millions of lives lost." Her gaze was steady, but there was an edge of emotion, a reminder of the weight she carried for her species. Ethan's eyes widened slightly, and he shook his head. I had no idea it was that important." He stopped, unsure how to explain that at the time he had only seen a person in danger, not the future of entire civilizations. "That is exactly what makes your choice extraordinary," Lyra interrupted gently. "You acted without knowledge, without expectation, and yet the consequences were beyond imagination. That is courage. That is humanity at its finest." Ethan was quiet, letting her words sink in. He had never considered his actions in such grand terms. To him, saving someone's life was the right thing to do, not a heroic moment to be lauded across galaxies. But Lyra's words were more than praise. They were a recognition of the impact he had made, the ripple effect that had reached far beyond the immediate danger. They reached a quieter observation deck, far above the station's main corridors. Through the large windows, the endless expanse of space stretched out, stars twinkling like diamonds, distant planets rotating silently. Ships moved along invisible lanes, some carrying goods, some carrying passengers, each oblivious to the small moment unfolding in the observation deck. Lyra leaned against the railing, her hands clasped together. "I have wanted to meet you for years," she admitted. "To see the person behind the actions, to tell you that what you did changed everything, not just for me but for countless others, and now, finally, I can." Ethan studied her for a long moment. "I never expected to be remembered," he said softly. "Most people forget after the danger is gone, after the immediate threat passes. I thought you would forget too." "I could never forget," she said. Her gaze softened, and for the first time a trace of vulnerability showed in her usually composed demeanor. "I would carry the memory of your courage forever. It was not just your hand that saved me. It was your decision, your clarity, your willingness to act when everything else seemed lost." The silence stretched between them, filled not with emptiness but with meaning. Around them, the station continued its constant motion, yet in this small bubble of space, the two of them existed outside time. Lyra finally let out a slow breath, as if releasing years of tension and unspoken thoughts. "There is something else," she said after a moment, her tone shifting to something more deliberate. "Your actions did not only affect my life, they influenced the politics of entire systems. You saved the summit, yes, but more importantly, you preserved trust between worlds. Without you, alliances would have broken, wars might have begun, entire species could have suffered." Ethan shook his head, still trying to process the weight of her words. "I was just one person, one human. I can't believe it had that kind of effect." "You underestimate yourself," Lyra said firmly. "Humans often do. You act without seeking recognition, and that is why your courage is so rare. It is not about the act itself, but the principle behind it, the instinct to do what is right, even without reward or acknowledgement." Ethan looked out the window at the stars, his mind racing. He had never considered that a single moment, a single choice, could create ripples so far-reaching. He had acted out of instinct, not strategy, yet in retrospect, it had changed the course of history. Lyra's voice softened. I wanted to meet you to thank you, yes, but I also wanted to understand you, to see the person behind the hero. Heroes often become legends, stories told over generations, but people like you are rare. I wanted to know what makes a human choose courage over fear. Ethan's lips curved into a faint smile. I don't know if I can answer that, he admitted. Maybe it's just instinct, maybe it's training, maybe it's hope, I don't know, but I did what I thought was right. That's all, Lyra nodded, a small smile forming. And that is enough, more than enough. That is what the galaxy needs, courage and morality, even when it is not convenient, even when it is risky. She paused, then added, and that is why I have come to you now. There is a role you could play, one far greater than what you have already done, a chance to shape the future not just for humans but for all species willing to work together. Ethan's brow furrowed. A role? What kind of role? A responsibility, Lyra replied. One that comes with great risk but also great influence. I cannot do it alone. The summit I was traveling to, the treaties and alliances we preserve, they require someone with your instincts, your courage, and your understanding of what it means to act for the greater good. Ethan was silent for a long moment, thinking. He had never imagined that saving one person could lead to such expectations. He had never considered stepping into a position that could influence interstellar politics. Yet the trust Lyra placed in him, the recognition of his abilities, stirred something he had never acknowledged in himself. I would need to know more, he said finally, his voice cautious but curious. I need to understand what this means, what is expected of me. I am just one person, Lyra. I don't know if I can handle that. You will not be alone, Lyra said gently. You will have guidance, support, and most importantly, trust. You have already proven that you can act decisively when it matters most. Now the galaxy asks you to do it again, not for one life, but for many. The enormity of her words sank in, but Ethan felt a spark of determination. The idea was daunting, yes, but it also aligned with the instincts that had guided him all those years ago. Courage had always been part of him, even if he had not realized its full extent. And if I refuse, he asked cautiously, if I decide this is too much, Lyra looked at him steadily, her expression unwavering. Then you walk away knowing that you have already changed the course of history once. No one can take that from you, but I hope you will not refuse, not because I ask it, but because the galaxy needs it. For a moment, Ethan said nothing. He turned back to the observation window, staring out at the stars. The vastness of space, the countless worlds, the endless possibilities, all of it pressed against him, overwhelming yet inspiring. He realized that the choice before him was not just about duty, but about who he was and what he could become. I will consider it, he said finally, his voice steady. I need time, but I will not walk away blindly. I want to understand. I want to make the right decision. Lyra nodded, her expression softening. That is all I ask. Time is a gift, and wisdom is required for the choices ahead. But know this, whatever you decide, the impact of your actions will resonate far beyond what you can see now. They stood in silence, side by side, watching ships drift past the observation deck. The stars outside seemed brighter, as if reflecting the potential for change, for hope, for unity. Lyra felt a rare sense of calm, knowing that the human who had saved her was also the one who could help shape the future. I have one more thing to tell you, she said after a long pause. There are others who are aware of your actions. Some will respect it, some will doubt it, and some may even try to stop it. But you must know, the trust I place in you is absolute, and I believe that you will rise to the challenge as you have always done. Ethan looked at her, understanding the gravity of her words. It was no longer just a meeting between two individuals. It was the start of a journey that could change the course of many lives. The burden was heavy, but he felt ready as he could be for something so unprecedented. Then we will face it together, he said finally, his voice calm but firm. Whatever comes next, I will not falter. Lyra allowed herself a small smile, relief and hope mingling in her chest. Together, she agreed. That is how the galaxy will move forward, side by side, human and alien, courage and wisdom united. And with that, the first steps of a partnership that would alter the fate of countless worlds were taken. In the quiet observation deck, amidst the endless stars, two individuals, so different yet bound by trust and courage, prepared to step into a future neither could have imagined, yet both were determined to shape. The next morning, the station was already alive with movement. Merchants called out in strange languages, travelers hurried past, and the hum of engines vibrated through the corridors. Lyra and Ethan walked together, moving toward a secure chamber reserved for high-ranking officials. The room was far from the public areas, with heavy doors and reinforced windows that looked out onto the swirling colors of nearby nebulae. "This is where decisions are made," Lyra said as she opened the door and stepped inside. "Where alliances are formed and where the future is debated." Ethan followed, taking in the sleek, minimalistic design. The chamber was large, circular, with a single table in the center surrounded by chairs. Holographic displays hovered in the air, showing maps of star systems, trade routes, and diplomatic contacts. Ethan had never imagined himself in a place like this. He had been a mechanic, a survivor, someone who acted instinctively in moments of danger. Politics, diplomacy, treaties, these were abstract concepts, distant from the life he had known. And yet here he was, being asked to consider a role that could affect entire species. "You understand," Lyra said, watching him closely, "that this will not be easy. Decisions here are never simple. Every choice affects countless lives. There will be pressure, scrutiny, and resistance. Not everyone will welcome your presence or your voice." Ethan nodded. "I understand, but why me? Why a human?" He gestured toward the holograms, toward the room that symbolized centuries of alien diplomacy. "I'm not like you. I've never studied politics. I've never commanded anyone. I've barely traveled outside my own planet." Lyra smiled faintly. "That is exactly why you are needed. Humans have a perspective that is often overlooked in interstellar affairs. You act with clarity without the weight of centuries of protocol or tradition. You decide based on principle, not politics. That is what this galaxy needs now: fresh eyes, courage, and moral clarity." Ethan considered her words carefully. He had always believed that courage was enough, that doing the right thing in the moment was sufficient. Yet here, Lyra was suggesting that courage could become influence, that his instincts could shape the future on a grand scale. It was intimidating, but strangely compelling. "You will need guidance," Lyra continued. "There are advisors who will teach you the intricacies of interstellar diplomacy, who will show you the protocols, the alliances, the treaties. But the decisions themselves, you must make. You must choose what is right, not what is expected. That is what I ask of you." Ethan took a deep breath. He had faced danger before, yes, but this was different. This was not about survival in the moment. This was about survival in the long term, about shaping a galaxy where countless lives hung in the balance. Yet as daunting as it was, he felt a strange sense of purpose. Perhaps for the first time in his life, he felt that his actions could mean more than mere survival. "I'll do it," he said finally. "I'll try. I don't know if I'll succeed, but I will not turn away." Lyra nodded, her expression softening. "That is all I ask. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. You have already shown that. Now the galaxy asks you to act again on a larger stage." They spent the morning reviewing documents and holographic maps. Lyra explained the alliances she had helped forge, the trade routes that connected countless planets, and the delicate balance of power that kept peace in the region. Ethan listened intently, asking questions, sometimes simple, sometimes surprisingly insightful. His perspective, unburdened by centuries of protocol, offered new ways of understanding old problems. By midday, a message arrived from the council overseeing interstellar diplomacy. A representative from a neighboring system requested an urgent audience, claiming a potential threat to one of the allied planets. Lyra looked at Ethan. "This is your first test," she said. "Observe, analyze, and help decide the response. But remember, your choice carries consequences. Think carefully." Ethan felt a surge of adrenaline. This was no longer theoretical. This was real. Lives depended on their decisions, and he had to rise to the occasion. They entered a smaller chamber where the council representatives were waiting. Beings of every shape and size filled the room, some adorned in intricate ceremonial robes, others in simple uniforms. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to skepticism as they looked at Ethan. One representative, a tall figure with silver scales and luminescent eyes, spoke first. "Lyra, who is this human? Why is he present in this chamber?" Lyra stood straight, her voice calm and authoritative. "He is Ethan. He saved my life and through that act helped preserve the peace that binds our worlds. He will offer a perspective that is rare and potentially invaluable. I ask that you listen before you judge." The council murmured among themselves, some skeptical, some intrigued. Ethan felt the weight of their gazes, yet he did not falter. He had faced danger before, he could face this. He stepped forward, nodding respectfully to the representatives. The discussion began, centered on a disputed mining colony on the edge of the system. Two allied planets claimed rights to the resources, and tensions had escalated to the point of threatening armed conflict. The council representatives debated strategy, protocol, and precedents. Ethan listened, absorbing the arguments, noting patterns, and evaluating risks. Finally, he spoke. "If I may," he began, his voice steady. "We need to focus on the long-term consequences, not just immediate claims. Conflict here could escalate, causing unnecessary loss and distrust. What if we mediate a joint agreement? One where both planets benefit equally and a neutral body oversees the resources." The room fell silent. Many representatives had never heard such a practical, unorthodox solution from someone outside their traditions. Some whispered to one another, others stared at him with a mixture of surprise and admiration. The silver-scaled representative leaned forward. "And you believe this will be accepted?" he asked, his voice cautious. Ethan nodded. "Yes, people respond to fairness. They respond to solutions that protect their interests while minimizing risk. This is not about taking sides. It is about finding a balance that preserves peace." Lyra's eyes shone with quiet pride. He was listening, thinking, and acting in ways that were rare for anyone, human or alien. The council debated further, but his words had planted a seed, guiding the discussion toward compromise rather than confrontation. By the end of the meeting, an agreement was drafted, a temporary joint administration of the mining colony with oversight from a neutral council. The representatives left, some nodding at Ethan, others still skeptical but aware that his input had been valuable. As the chamber emptied, Lyra turned to him. "You see, even a single voice guided by principle can change the course of events. You acted with clarity and it worked. But this is only the beginning. The galaxy will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine." Ethan felt a mix of relief and determination. He had succeeded, yes, but he knew that the challenges ahead would only grow more complex. He had faced danger physically before, but now he faced the intricate dangers of diplomacy, alliances, and the fragile balance of interstellar peace. Hours passed as Lyra introduced him to more of her contacts, explaining the subtle alliances, the rivalries, and the historical conflicts that had shaped current politics. Ethan took it all in, asking questions, offering insights, and slowly building his understanding of the vast, interconnected systems that govern the galaxy. By evening, they stood on the observation deck once more, watching the stars and ships drift past. Ethan's mind was racing, but there was a sense of accomplishment. He had survived battles before, but this was different. This was a battle of strategy, influence, and principle, and he was not alone. "Do you understand now?" Lyra asked softly, her eyes on him. "This is why I sought you out. The galaxy needs humans, not just as individuals, but as symbols of courage, clarity, and integrity. Your perspective is rare, and your instincts are invaluable." Ethan nodded slowly. "I understand, and I see why you brought me here. It is overwhelming, but I think I can do it. I have to try." Lyra smiled, a mixture of pride and relief in her expression. "That is all anyone can ask. You have faced danger before, and now you face a different kind of challenge. But courage, clarity, and principle, they will guide you, and I will be here to support you." As night fell over the station, the lights dimmed in the observation deck, casting soft reflections on the windows. Ships moved silently in the distance, and the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if acknowledging the decisions made within the walls of the station. Ethan felt a sense of purpose he had never known. The galaxy was vast, filled with dangers, conflicts, and uncertainties, but he realized that his choices mattered. He had already shaped events once, and now he had the chance to continue shaping them for the better. Lyra stood beside him, quiet yet present. Together, they represented more than just human and alien. They represented the potential for unity, understanding, and courage to overcome fear and division. And as they looked out at the endless expanse, Ethan knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, but also full of possibilities he had never imagined. The first test had been a success, but the galaxy was vast, and challenges would continue to arise. Political intrigue, Rival factions and hidden threats would test their abilities, their trust, and their resolve. Yet for the first time, Ethan felt ready. Not because he was perfect, but because he understood that courage and clarity could shape the future, even in the face of overwhelming odds. And as the two of them stood in silence, looking out at the stars, it became clear that their partnership, born from a single act of heroism years ago, was now the foundation for something far greater. The chance to guide a galaxy toward balance, hope, and a future where courage and humanity could make a difference. The station's corridors seemed quieter that morning, but the calm was deceptive. News traveled fast in a place like this, and rumors of a human being involved in interstellar diplomacy had already begun to circulate. Some whispered with excitement, curious about the human Lyra had brought, while others whispered with suspicion, questioning why a species often overlooked in galactic politics now had a voice in matters of great importance. Lyra and Ethan moved through the station toward a secure briefing room, their steps purposeful. Today, they would meet representatives from rival systems, systems with histories of conflict, their leaders wary of compromise, their pride and suspicion as deep as the space between stars. Lyra could feel the tension as she approached the heavy doors. She had spent years navigating these delicate negotiations, and she knew that even a small misstep could unravel the fragile trust she had built. Ethan's hand brushed the edge of his coat as he followed her, the weight of the responsibility settling on his shoulders. He had handled crises before, yes, but this was different. This was not a mechanical failure, a shuttle ambush, or a sudden explosion. This was diplomacy, a battlefield of words, principles, and trust, where mistakes could ignite wars rather than fires. He drew a deep breath and reminded himself that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. The briefing room was large and circular, with a holographic map hovering above a central table. The map showed several planets and star systems, each outlined with glowing lines to indicate boundaries, trade routes, and contested regions. Representatives from 5 different systems were already present, their appearances as diverse as the stars themselves. Some were sleek and humanoid, others winged or multi-limbed, their languages soft and sharp in cadence. All were observing Ethan with measured eyes, curious, skeptical, and perhaps even a little wary. Lyra stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. "Thank you for joining this session," she began, her voice calm and firm. "We are here to discuss a matter that requires clarity, fairness, and foresight. The disputes over the Velara system must be resolved peacefully for the sake of all parties involved. I have brought with me someone whose perspective is unique, unburdened by centuries of protocol, who may offer insight into achieving a resolution that benefits all." Ethan stepped forward, his posture steady despite the roomful of eyes upon him. He nodded respectfully to the representatives before speaking. "I am Ethan," he said simply. "I was asked to observe and offer a solution if possible. I will not take sides, but I will try to find a way for all parties to benefit and avoid conflict." A low murmur ran through the room. Some representatives whispered to each other, exchanging skeptical glances. Humans had rarely been granted a voice in matters of interstellar diplomacy, and the boldness of this one speaking directly was unsettling to some. Yet there was something in his calm, measured presence that demanded attention. The first representative, a tall being with translucent skin that glimmered like liquid crystal, spoke in a measured tone. "A human? Why should we listen to him? He is not a ruler, nor has he experience with the Velara system." Ethan met the being's gaze without flinching. "I may not have experience," he admitted, "but I can see things clearly. I can evaluate the consequences, not just of this moment, but of the actions that follow. I can offer solutions that minimize conflict and protect lives. That is all I ask you to consider." Lyra watched silently, allowing him to speak, knowing that his words carried a weight that tradition often could not match. Humans had a way of cutting through complexity with simplicity, of finding paths where others only saw walls. The discussion began in earnest. The Velara system contained valuable minerals, rich planets, and strategic routes. 2 allied systems claimed ownership, while a third system insisted on sovereignty due to historical precedent. The representatives argued, citing treaties, historical events, and technical details. Ethan listened carefully, taking mental notes, observing the patterns of behavior and identifying points of compromise. After several tense minutes, he spoke. "I understand that each of you has a legitimate claim," he said, his voice steady. "But conflict will only harm everyone involved. What if we establish a shared administration for the Valera system? One that includes representatives from each of the systems involved, with oversight from a neutral body. This way, resources are used efficiently, all parties benefit, and the potential for conflict is greatly reduced." The room fell silent. Some representatives frowned, considering the idea. Others whispered, skeptical of the humans' bold proposal. One representative, a being with wings folded neatly behind her, leaned forward. "And you believe this will be accepted by our populations?" she asked, her tone sharp. Ethan nodded. "Yes, people respond to fairness and security. They do not respond to favoritism or conflict. If we can show them a solution that protects their interests, they will accept it. It may not be perfect, but it will prevent unnecessary harm and build trust." Lyra felt a surge of pride. He was listening, thinking, and acting in ways that even seasoned diplomats struggled to do. His approach was logical, ethical, and guided by a principle that few fully understood: that true leadership required courage, fairness, and clarity. The debate continued, with Ethan interjecting where necessary, offering simple yet profound observations. Slowly, the representatives began to consider the shared administration. By the end of the session, a preliminary agreement was drafted. The Valera system would be jointly administered, with a council composed of representatives from each claiming system, overseen by a neutral interstellar body to ensure fairness. The proposal was not without compromise, but it was a solution that minimized risk and maximized cooperation. As the representatives left the room, some still skeptical but others nodding in approval, Ethan felt a strange sense of accomplishment. He had acted decisively, offered solutions, and influenced a resolution that might otherwise have ended in conflict. And yet, he knew that this was only the beginning. There were other systems, other disputes, other challenges awaiting them. Lyra turned to him, her expression serious but proud. "You see now why I brought you here," she said. "Your perspective is rare, your courage and clarity invaluable, but this is only the start. The galaxy will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine. Rival factions, hidden agendas, and the weight of history will challenge you constantly." Ethan nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. "I am ready," he said firmly. "I do not know what lies ahead, but I will face it as I have before, carefully, thoughtfully, and with courage." The two of them left the briefing room and returned to the observation deck, the stars stretching endlessly beyond the windows. Ships drifted past, carrying goods, passengers, and secrets, each unaware of the human who had just influenced the course of interstellar diplomacy. Ethan felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. He had survived battles in the void, evaded mercenaries, and rescued lives in the past, but this was a different kind of challenge. This required strategy, wisdom, and the courage to make decisions that could shape entire worlds. Lyra watched him quietly, her gaze filled with a mixture of relief and admiration. She had known that humans had potential, that their courage and clarity were unmatched in critical moments, but seeing it in action was profoundly satisfying. He had met the first test and succeeded, but the galaxy was vast, and challenges would only grow. As evening fell, a message arrived from the council Lyra reported to. A rival faction had challenged the preliminary agreement for the Valera system, claiming that the shared administration violated a centuries-old treaty. The faction demanded an immediate council meeting to reconsider. The message was polite but firm, a reminder that peace was fragile and always under threat. Lyra handed the message to Ethan. "This is your next test," she said. "They are questioning the agreement, seeking to overturn it. You must present your case clearly and decisively. The success of this administration, and perhaps the stability of this region, depends on it." Ethan read the message carefully, understanding the stakes. It was one thing to propose a solution, but another entirely to defend it against those who opposed it. The weight of responsibility pressed on him, yet he did not falter. He had faced danger before, and now he faced opposition. Courage required persistence as well as action. They prepared together, reviewing the points of the agreement, the reasons behind it, and the potential outcomes of both acceptance and rejection. Lyra offered guidance, reminding him to focus on fairness, principle, and clarity. Ethan absorbed every word, determined to make the best case possible. The next council meeting was tense. Representatives from all factions were present, their expressions ranging from curiosity to open skepticism. Ethan stood at the center, Lyra beside him, ready to support but allowing him to speak. The room fell silent as he began to present the case for the shared administration of the Velara system. He spoke calmly, clearly, and logically. He explained the benefits of cooperation, the risks of conflict, and the importance of fairness. He addressed concerns with simple, direct reasoning and offered solutions to potential objections. Slowly, he began to win over even the most skeptical representatives. His perspective was unorthodox, but it was rooted in clarity, fairness, and the desire to protect lives. Hours passed as discussion and debate continued. Ethan listened carefully, responded thoughtfully, and adjusted his approach when necessary. By the end of the meeting, the council voted to uphold the shared administration, with additional oversight measures to ensure transparency and fairness. The preliminary agreement was secured, a testament to the power of courage, clarity, and moral conviction. As the room emptied, Lyra turned to him with a rare, genuine smile. "You have done it," she said. "You have faced opposition, presented your case, and secured the first victory. The galaxy is watching, and you have shown that courage, clarity, and humanity can make a difference." Ethan felt a surge of relief and pride. He had acted decisively, defended his principles, and influenced the outcome of a critical dispute. And yet, he knew that challenges would continue to arise. The galaxy was vast, and peace was always fragile. As they returned to the observation deck, the stars stretched endlessly beyond the windows, and Ethan felt a sense of purpose he had never known. He had survived battles in the void, evaded mercenaries, and rescued lives, but this was a different kind of victory. It was the victory of reason, courage, and moral clarity, and it set the stage for even greater challenges and accomplishments. Lyra stood beside him, silent but supportive. Together, they represented more than just human and alien. They represented the potential for unity, understanding, and courage to overcome fear and division. And as they looked out at the stars, it became clear that their partnership, born from a single act of heroism years ago, was now the foundation for something far greater. The chance to guide a galaxy toward balance, hope, and a future where courage and humanity could make difference. The galaxy was quiet that morning, but the calm was temporary. Lyra and Ethan stood on the observation deck, watching distant ships glide past the station, their lights trailing like fireflies against the dark canvas of space. The Velara system's shared administration had been approved, but the challenge was far from over. Other factions were watching, waiting for any sign of weakness, ready to exploit it. Ethan's hand rested on the railing, eyes fixed on a distant blue planet. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down, heavier than any shuttle crash, heavier than any battle he had faced. This was not a physical challenge. This was a challenge of strategy, foresight, and courage. The fate of countless lives rested on their choices, and one wrong step could unravel the fragile peace they had fought to preserve. Lyra stepped beside him, her expression calm but serious. "You have done more than most could imagine," she said quietly. "The Velara system was just the beginning. There are those who will try to undermine it to test the limits of your influence and resolve. Are you ready for what comes next?" Ethan turned to her, determination burning in his eyes. "I don't know if anyone can ever be fully ready for this," he said. "But I do know that I cannot turn away. I've seen what happens when fear guides decisions instead of principle. I won't let that happen if I can help it." Lyra nodded, a small smile breaking through her usual composure. "Then let's begin. There is a council session today. Representatives from 5 systems are arriving to discuss recent tensions in the Altari expanse. These tensions threaten trade routes, alliances, and even the fragile peace we have built. Your insight will be required, Ethan." As they prepared for the session, Ethan felt the tension in the air. He had faced opposition before, yes, but today felt different. The stakes were higher, and the eyes of the galaxy were upon him. He reviewed the notes and maps Lyra had prepared, familiarizing himself with trade routes, historical conflicts, and alliances. Every detail mattered, and even a small oversight could be disastrous. The council chamber was already filled when they arrived. Beings of all shapes and sizes were present, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright skepticism. Some were seasoned diplomats, their experience spanning centuries. Others were younger representatives, ambitious and eager to prove themselves. All were aware of the human at the center of this discussion, a figure who had already defied expectations by shaping the Velara Agreement. Lyra introduced Ethan, her voice steady and authoritative. "This is Ethan," she said. "A human who has already played a critical role in preserving peace. He is here to offer insight, guidance, and perspective as we navigate the challenges before us. I ask that you listen and consider his counsel with the seriousness it deserves." Ethan took a deep breath. He had not sought this role, nor had he ever imagined himself in such a position, but he understood now that courage was not just about facing danger. It was about responsibility, principle, and action when it mattered most. He stepped forward and addressed the council. "The Altari Expanse is critical for trade and communication between our systems," he began. "Recent tensions threaten not just commerce but alliances and trust. Conflict here could spread, affecting planets far beyond this region. We need a solution that prioritizes fairness, security, and cooperation. A solution that ensures all parties benefit without unnecessary risk." The room fell silent. Some representatives whispered among themselves, questioning the human's perspective, while others leaned forward, curious. It was rare for a single voice, especially that of a human, to command such attention in interstellar diplomacy. A representative from the Trellan system, a being with segmented armor-like skin and multiple arms, spoke first. "How can a human, with no experience in our politics, propose a solution that satisfies all parties? Your past success was unusual, but the Altari Expanse is far more complex." Ethan met the Trellan's gaze without hesitation. "I do not claim to have all the answers, but I can observe, analyze, and offer solutions that minimize conflict. Complexity is not solved by tradition alone. It is solved by clarity, fairness, and principle. I will listen, and I will act based on what is right for all parties, not just what is convenient or expected." Lyra watched, silently proud. His courage was not just in action, but in words. He had faced danger before, yes, but now he faced skepticism, tradition, and centuries of mistrust. Yet he did not falter. He spoke with calm, reasoned authority, and the room listened. The discussion was long and tense. Representatives argued, cited historical claims, and questioned each other's motives. Ethan listened carefully, weighing every word, noting patterns of behavior, and identifying points of compromise. When he spoke, his words were simple, direct, and thoughtful, cutting through the noise of politics. He proposed a system of joint oversight, with representatives from all involved parties managing the disputed trade routes and resources collaboratively. A neutral body would ensure fairness, transparency, and accountability. His solution was unconventional, yet rooted in logic and principle, emphasizing cooperation over conflict. Some representatives were hesitant, unwilling to surrender traditional authority or trust a human's judgment. Others nodded, recognizing the clarity and fairness in his reasoning. Slowly, the discussion shifted from opposition to cautious consideration. His perspective, unburdened by protocol and personal ambition, offered a path forward that others could not see. Hours passed. Debate was intense, with moments of tension so thick it seemed the chamber itself would shatter. Ethan responded calmly, addressing concerns, suggesting adjustments, and always returning to the principle of fairness. Lyra supported him, providing guidance when necessary, but allowing him to lead the discussion. By late evening, a preliminary agreement emerged. The disputed regions of the Altari Expanse would be jointly managed, with oversight from a council composed of representatives from all involved systems, monitored by a neutral interstellar authority. Compromises had been made, but the agreement preserved peace, trust, and cooperation. The room fell silent as the vote was cast. Every representative looked to Ethan and Lyra as the results were tallied. When the outcome was announced, approval of the agreement, there was a mixture of relief, respect, and cautious optimism. The human who had once saved a life now helped safeguard entire systems, his clarity and courage shaping the future in ways no one had expected. As the chamber emptied, Lyra turned to Ethan. "You have done it again," she said softly, her eyes filled with admiration. "You have faced opposition, presented solutions, and preserved peace. The galaxy is watching, and you have shown that courage, principle, and humanity matter, even in the most complex matters." Ethan felt exhaustion mixed with pride. He had acted decisively, navigated opposition, and influenced outcomes that would affect countless lives. And yet he knew this was not the end. The galaxy was vast, with hidden agendas, rival factions, and challenges that would continue to test their courage and resolve. That night, they returned to the observation deck, looking out at the endless stars. Ethan reflected on the journey that had brought him here, from saving a life in the void to shaping interstellar policy. He realized that courage was not measured by the battles one fought, but by the decisions one made, the integrity one maintained, and the willingness to act when the future was uncertain. Lyra stood beside him, silent but present. "Do you understand now why I sought you?" she asked. "It is not just about your past actions. It is about the potential you have to shape the future, to act with clarity and principle when others are blinded by fear or ambition. That is what humans can bring to the galaxy: courage, clarity, and the ability to act rightly even in the most difficult circumstances." Ethan nodded. "I understand, and I will continue to act as best I can. The galaxy may test me again and again, but I will not turn away. I will face whatever comes with courage and clarity." Lyra smiled, a mixture of relief and pride in her expression. "Then we are ready for what comes next. The galaxy will always challenge us, but together we can guide it toward hope, stability, and unity. That is the power of courage and principle." As they stood in silence, the stars reflecting in their eyes, the station around them seemed to hum with possibility. Ships glided past, unaware of the human and alien whose decisions had just preserved peace. But the impact of their choices would ripple across worlds, shaping events for generations to come. Ethan felt a sense of purpose he had never known. He had survived battles, evaded mercenaries, and faced life-or-death crises, but this was a different kind of heroism. It was the heroism of principle, of courage guided by clarity, of acting for the greater good even when the stakes were unimaginable. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, steady and reassuring. "The galaxy will watch you, human, and it will test you. But never forget this: courage, clarity, and humanity are more powerful than any weapon. They shape the future in ways others cannot even imagine." Ethan looked out at the stars, feeling the weight of those words. He had once acted in the void, saving a life without thought of reward or recognition. Now he understood that the same principles applied on a far grander scale. Courage was not just about surviving. It was about guiding, protecting, and shaping a future where countless lives could thrive. The stars stretched endlessly, a reminder of the infinite possibilities ahead. Together, Ethan and Lyra represented more than just human and alien. They represented hope, unity, and the power of courage and principle to change the galaxy. And as they prepared to face the challenges yet to come, both knew one truth: the universe would never be the same again, and neither would they.